What should one do instead of closing a business if you are making a loss? That's interesting because not even sure that's grammatically correct. But anyway, that's a pretty important question, I think. And my experience is that I've dealt a lot with that, businesses that are in trouble, and that's kind of my history and sort of my thing. So, what do you do instead of closing your business if you're making a loss? Well, the first thing you got to do, absolutely 100%, is you got to figure out, why are you losing money? Sometimes you lose money because you've lost customers. Sometimes you lose money because the market changes. But the truth is, most businesses are losing money because if they've just started, they generally don't know how they made money in the first place. They may have had a really great idea. That great idea might have led to some customers and to some excitement and to them registering their corporate name and doing a bunch of marketing and being successful. But at some point, when a business gets going and it gets outside of the hands of the entrepreneur that started it, it tends to get to a place where it crashes, or it reaches a critical moment where if you don't have a handle on what's going on in the business, then you might be forced to close it. Now, typically when a question like that is asked, let me just make sure, what should one do instead of closing a business if you are making a loss? So it's the easiest answer in the world to say, let's just close the business. But the fact that this particular individual is saying, what should I do instead of closing my business, maybe means that panic or fear has struck this particular individual, or maybe some anxiety or some stress that goes along with the business that isn't succeeding. And they know they don't want to close the business, but maybe they don't have the people in their life, or they don't have the conversation pieces available to them through other people that can help them work through it. So here's what you do for business taking loss. First of all, you got to figure out why your business is losing money. Do you know how to make money in the first place? If you know how to make money in the first place, then what has changed? Is the price dropping? Is the market changing? Or do you maybe just have too many expenses that your business is running, and so therefore you're now in a position where you got to make a loss? So typically what I do is I'll take out a fresh sheet of paper and I'll say to an entrepreneur, I'll say, just explain this to me as if I know nothing at all about business. Explain to me how you make money. And then as the entrepreneur begins to articulate that, then it starts to become obvious where maybe some of the wobbly pieces might be. And again, assuming that the market is going to be the market, there's nothing that you can really do about that. And assuming your competitors are your competitors, and there are competitive forces that are changing either the price or how you deliver your product, your service. And the only other thing you got to do is look at your business and go, okay, what can we pull away from the business? What can we cut? How can we make sure that our costs, that we are not paying more than we have to be able to run this particular business? And it's surprising how that can lead to some interesting conversations. For example, I sat with a fella a couple weeks ago, and he runs a commercial painting business. And he had talked about how, their crew of 50 or 60 people, he had maybe over the course, I think it was over the course of a year and a half, he had changed their compensation package sort of 2 or 3 times. He went from putting them on payroll to making them subcontractors to paying them hourly to then paying them based on piecework or them being able to only get a fixed amount of money for the job that they were doing. And in and amongst all of that, really what he was scrambling to do was to try and figure out how to make money, because he knew he could get the jobs. He knew he could buy the paint and the paint brushes and everything else that he needed for the business, but he was struggling to really get his labor under control. And so it's not as if the painting business wasn't needed in the marketplace. It's not as if he needed a market that didn't have a lot of competitors in it to do really, really well. He just really needed to figure out, man, how are we going to make some money? If I have to win these contracts at a certain price, and then I have to go and hire a bunch of painters, how do I structure my labor so that I can actually end up making money? So instead of closing your business, you got to sit back with fresh eyes and someone else maybe to talk to, or even a pretend person if you don't feel comfortable enough talking to people because maybe you're scared of what they might say or it might affect your reputation. But you do have to sit down and figure out, why are we not making any money? Where is the real loss? And then once you've identified what that loss is, then the next thing that you've got to do is you got to start getting to work on, well, what do we do next? In the case of this commercial painter, what he had decided to do is he decided to say, look, instead of taking on every job that I've been taking on over the last year, because we're having trouble, I'm only going to take on the jobs that are kind of in our sweet spot. So I'm not going to take $10,000 jobs. not going to take $150,000 jobs, but I think his number was, I don't know, it was like somewhere around, I think it was like somewhere around $70,000 or $80,000. He said $70,000 or $80,000, there's enough margin that I can actually make, some pretty decent money doing that. I can put the projects through quickly enough. And yeah, you know what? I'm probably not going to do the $6 million this year that I did last year. But if I end up doing half of that amount, maybe I can be more profitable. So figure out why your business is losing money in the first place. Then put a strategy together to figure out, what do you need to do? What do you need to do to correct the problem? And ultimately, what do you need to do to be successful? What would it take? It's easy to think of the things that are going wrong. It's really tough to think about the things that could go right. And especially if you're having especially if your business is going through a really tough moment, because you're generally not very optimistic to begin with. You're probably not resting well at nighttime. You're probably waking up with anxiety or some stress in the pit of your stomach. And so the only thing you can think about is how to protect the only thing that you can think about is, how do I make sure I don't lose more than what I already have, instead of looking at it from the perspective of, what is it that I have to work with right now? And then how can I do what I need to do with it to produce the result that I'm looking for? So closing your business, to me, at the end of the day, means, the jig's up. There's nothing else that you can do. Whether it be market forces or competitive forces or your pricing or your accountant screwed you or the government screwed you or whatever your reasons are for closing down your business, generally your business will close down because they really just can't see their way through it. The entrepreneur can't see a way to realign the business, correct it, make the changes, downsize, make the tough decisions that are needed for the business to survive. So it's unfortunate the business is closed. I think we all know that the stats are pretty high, that a business will, 80% of businesses or some number like that. I don't know the exact stat, but the number is really high because it actually is really difficult to run a business. First of all, to start a business is easy, but to build a profitable business where there's real money in the bank after the fact, that's really, really tough to do. And as you start a business and get building it and putting the wheels on it as you go, you can lose sight of, how are we making money? Are we actually making money? What does all of that look like? And so closing a business kind of becomes that critical moment that any successful entrepreneur has to find a way through, and 80% of them don't. So what should one do? Instead of closing a business if you're making a loss, figure out why your business is losing money, and then figure out what it takes to turn that around, and be prepared to make the hard decisions. So hopefully you find that helpful.